the first thing that I would look for in a model that I'm going to be putting into a rendering software is that it has separate surfaces or sides that you're able to attach different materials to. So in Revit, right, they have like a wall construction that like has all of the things broken out and they're already associated with textures. But Rhino, we obviously don't have that, right? So if you're looking at a project like this, maybe you have things Booleaned all together. I would recommend you not do that for this situation. What I would recommend is you have either surfaces or making them actually like blocks themselves as like it just extrusions like together, and it'll all like map together when you put it into the software. If it is Boolean together, maybe you're copying this guy over and exploding it. So now you have surfaces, but the only issue with that is that since you do have like a bunch of surfaces, right? Like you want to be very thoughtful of like where you're wanting to take the render from. And I think that that goes forward with any rendering software that you do. Don't take the time to make everything absolutely perfect. You just want to make the things look right in the areas that you're actually going to take the render from. Does that make sense? And again, this goes for renderings and vignettes. So vignettes being a little bit more abstract. But so if I was going to render something from here, I would only try to get this area in which I would be texturing out and adding materials and adding objects. I wouldn't really care about any of these other areas because that's just a waste of my time. So putting on materials is like you've put on materials before. If you haven't put on materials before, that's fine. You want to go over to this properties object, and then you want to go to the surfaces materials themselves. You're not necessarily needing, in Lumion specifically, you're not necessarily needing to put the material that you want on the thing right now. You can use the embedded native Lumion textures that comes with Lumion. For V-Ray, it's not the same. Like you need to actually put the material on. So in Lumion, there is an option that it is kind of the lazy way, but in my opinion, it's kind of the quick way, that you just do a custom material. You call that custom material. This is going to be the roof material. And so when you put it into Lumion, it's actually going to pick up that it is a roof. And so each thing that has that roof material on it, you can click it and all the roofs will change. If not, if you're actually wanting to put an actual material, you can either use one of, so I did a few here, but you can put one on here that has some sort of like color or whatever on here. I don't really want to go a lot into that right now, but what mapping is where you're telling the like program where you're wanting to stop and start the pattern of the material. So you've probably come across the situation where you have like a table and you want it to be wood and your texture is not repeatable. So you just have these like lines that are like showing the little texture all over the place. You're trying to reduce that by texture mapping. So if you want to learn more about that, I would recommend you go on, get a video to do that. But this is where you find that texture mapping in Rhino. And oftentimes the best option for that is applying box mapping. So you go to the box mapping over here, you make the box, and if there was a material in here, it would show up, and then you change the positioning and sizing based on how it looks on the surface here. Since this is not that, this is not what we need to do for this one. In this situation, I would just go through and name certain items that you need to name that are going to have like pertinence to what you're looking at. So if I'm in this area, maybe I want this to be a threshold texture. This is whatever that might be. Again, you do that custom and then you can rename it to whatever it is. I'm going to put it back on this. And then maybe this is tables. So I'm going to do tables. And then these are benches. In this situation, I might want to explode it because I do kind of want to get the floor a little bit different than the walls. So I'm going to explode this and I'm going to make this a floor. And make this a wall. Yeah, and then these are glass. They're already coming up as glass. This is a threshold. This is a door. Okay, so Lumion, as a lot of other rendering softwares have, they do have some plugins so that you're able to live sync it to the rendering software that you're using. However, sometimes I've often find that the live sync not only slows down your computer a lot, it also is just sometimes a little glitchy. And so I like a little bit more manual control over it. So I'm going to show you the more manual way, but you can download the plugin if you want. So in Lumion specifically, they use, you have to export it as a collada file. So when you go up to File, Export Selected, so I would select the object that you're wanting to do, Export Selected, and then we'll do collada, which is a .dae file. And this will be test exterior house, whatever this is, building. This is a building. All right, you're going to save that somewhere safe, and we're going to open up Lumion. So this one, the student version is free to you guys. Same with D5 and same with Enscape, I believe. All of those are free, so just kind of use them, whichever one you feel like works best for you. So we're going to create new. Since you have massing, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to have like, oh, I'm going to put in this exact context, but I'm going to show you kind of the process to do that if you don't have a actual file. So in this situation, maybe let's just do a plain environment for now. And so a thing to note, so it'll always place you kind of in this area. See, there's the little starting point. Where you export your file from, it'll export from that point. So if your model is like 100 meters away from that origin point, your model here will also be like 100 meters away from that origin point. So I would highly recommend that you bring it to the origin, make a copy, bring it to the origin so that you have it right away. It's not a big deal. If it isn't that way, you just are going to hate your life. Maybe just don't do it. Okay, so grab it. Again, there's that DAE file. It pretty much only will open these type of files anyway, so you don't really have a choice. Yeah, import that model. This is all fine. In this situation, this student had lights in their Rhino project. I would recommend you use all the lights native to Lumion, not specifically here. That also goes for a lot of other rendering software though. Most of the rendering programs that I will use their internal lighting system because it will represent light better than Rhino will. So say the tooltip point. So I'm scrolling out with the scroll wheel. The tooltip will go in the middle of that model. So we're going to set that down here. Look, we could set 100 of these down. Something to note, Lumion and a lot of other programs are similar to games. Cool. I'm not, but I had to learn how to do that just before this. So on your keyboard, there's the ASD QWE, ASD. Those points, I always keep my hand on that side when I do any of this to keep efficiency. So Q is always up, E is always down. Again, it's very similar to a video game. Left and right is A and D, and then W is forward, S is backwards. There is a help thing down here. So if you want a tutorial, it'll give you a tutorial. This again goes for Enscape. V-Ray doesn't have this, but that's just a slightly different beast. Again, if you want to have specific like tutorials on Lumion, I would recommend that you just go to YouTube and look up Lumion tutorials because there's so much more here than I can show you right now. So right now, I just want to place the building generally. Gives you the option to move it around, which is nice. And then also what I'm doing is my right finger is clicking and holding to be able to pan around. So that's how I'm panning right now. If you hit shift, you will go faster into the building. So in this situation, I don't have the topo or the context. So if you do come across a situation where you don't have that, there are some programs have this, some don't, but Lumion does have this mode called OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap allows you to be able to import maps and generally close-ish information about the site that's around it. So buildings are close to what they need to be. The topography will not. The topography will never come in with any program that I've found so far. So if topography is very important, you're going to have to manipulate that in Rhino. You can pick the coordinates, or you can just type it in, but you can find where you're at based on this nice little map, or you can type in the address. Okay, so let's pretend it's on your site. You can change the orientation based on this, or if you like messed up, you can rotate the entire building, but it will change all of your views if you do that later than sooner. And then the range just changes how wide of a space you're getting. Cool. Let's bring the range a little bit smaller. Looks kind of boxy. Okay, so now my building's slightly on the street. But we're going to go down to the area that we were at. And we're going to go to the materials. So yeah, like D5 has, the materials are now showing up. Do you see how it's coming up as like material thresholds? And obviously if it was an actual material, it would show up as a material just like this glass has. I do like some of the native Lumion materials just because they're repeatable and you don't have that seam and you're not having to deal with mapping, which is really nice. So let's say that these are wood. So you have a lot of options. You can type it in, you can import your own. We can be like, okay, well, I'm gonna, whatever, choose this wood, perhaps. If I want to edit that, I can go into this and change it based on that. We'll kind of infill this model with whatever we think is going to be in it. There is an option for like styrofoam and white model making in this. So if you don't have the materials, you will still have like the ability to just make it kind of diagrammatic. But as you can see here too, the wall that I pulled off as a surface is now reading as a totally different material than the rest of the building. So that's why it matters. I keep Rhino up during my workflow. I keep Rhino up at the same time so that I can keep working through like going back and forth and re-exporting over and over and over again, just to make sure that everything's kind of vibing together well. This is going to look crazy, so don't really think too much about the materials right now. Great. Once you're okay with that, click that OK button. If you do accidentally exit out, you will have pretty much lost everything that you've done up until this point with materials. So just make sure that you're doing that over and over again. The good thing about Lumion is that it constantly internally saves and has backups internally. So you're not necessarily needing to save over and over again. It just saves within itself. You do have the option of putting down objects, people, whatever, but they do kind of come up as scary people. So I'd probably recommend you not do that and just do all of your stuff in Photoshop because it's just going to be easier. The more random everyday things that you put into a model, it makes it look more realistic to people. And not that necessarily that you're trying to make it look realistic, but it's you're trying to give a sense of someone being able to feel themselves in the space. Okay. Once you have that done, you're going to be going over to this photo area and you're going to choose the picture that you're wanting. Again, I'm not 100% sure if all of you guys have the assignment out for the midterm yet, but I know my section, probably Iman's, Kay's, has it very specifically noted to take renders from eye level, and that's important because we're human people and we can't fly. Oftentimes, we see a lot of aerial views of like objects, and I think that sometimes it's better to be able to just show that diagrammatically than show this aerial view of your building that no one will ever be able to see actually in real life ever. Okay, so we're going to store the image. So let's say that this is like the view that we're wanting. We're going to store this image. And then we're going to add a kind of a base style to it initially so that you're able to build on that style. So Lumion has preset concepts, styles that you're able to put on it, and then you can edit through those to what you actually want. So making sure that you have the 2-point perspective on is probably the most important so that you can have the straight vertical lines. Some level of changing each of the items to make it fit to whatever your story is important. So always changing these secondary things will be really important. I'm not going to go through each one just because it's, again, it's a whole other 100 hours. But just having enough to have the right base image is going to be important as you're going forward. So there's a lot. As you can see, they're all in this add effect, and there's a lot that you can use. Let me see here. So say I'm like, wow, this one was actually a lot better than this one. I'm going to restore this camera. But if I move around, I can just double click back into it to get back to the camera that I was at. So when we render this, I would try to do it at the largest quality possible, but while you're working through, just render out drafts so that you can constantly see what it looks like as you go through, because it only is really accurate until you render it out. These outputs are important. This happens on a lot of different rendering softwares where it's giving you options to export other things that are able to be layered on top of the base render that you're making. For example, and you'll see what this means in a second, like a normals map, the sky map, and a material ID are probably pretty good. For this tutorial, I'm just going to do desktop size, but okay, so we're going to call this whatever, exterior render 1. The one big thing with Lumion that I appreciated a lot when I was working was the speed of it. As you can see, that took like no time. There is a big pro to that workflow. Most rendering softwares are going to give you the one image, but then if you ask for the other additional outputs, it'll give you the other one. So this one is the normals. And as you can see, it's kind of showing different faces, but not necessarily in like different planes that you're able to like select upon. And they're these crazy colors because you're able to click on it really quickly instead of having to do the pen tool and try to like go around and finagle this one table. When you're just trying to get the one table, you can just do one click. The sky is, again, another one, really good one that if you're like, I just want to select the sky right now, you can do this like really quickly with the magic wand tool. And then the materials is exactly what it sounds like. It highlights all the things that have that same material so that you're able to, again, it's just an efficiency thing. You're trying to work faster. So you'll bring these into Photoshop. I would bring the first one in initially, just so it opens it up, click and drag, as you saw. And then I would go through, select all of the outputs that you're wanting to put into this and drag them so that they stack. So now, do you see they're going to start stacking on top of each other? So you're not having to like drag it and then try to move it around. Like they're all going to be perfectly aligned with each other now. Naming conventions on Photoshop is very important just due to the fact that like you're dealing with a lot of layers potentially. And so having some sort of organization is going to be better than sometimes what I do, which is like plant 1, right plant, left plant. And it's just chaotic. So being a little bit more organized with your layers is very important. In this situation, they are naming it, which is really nice. I would always kind of keep these up at the top, and sometimes using folders is very nice for this. So we can name this like outputs, and always keeping them at the top. So when you do magic wand tool, which is W, it selects all of these things really easily because they're solid colors. Do you see this? Since I'm on this layer, and but this one's visible and this one's not visible, I'm still clicking the one that's here. So just be aware of that. I also, for the duration of this tutorial, I'm not going to have auto select on. I know that a lot of you guys typically do just because you feel like it's easy, because then you can like click on things real easy that you see. I found it's really tricky to be conscientious about what you're exactly clicking. And sometimes you're like moving your plant and then you export it and your teacher's like, why is this plant on someone's face? To me, it's a matter of clean, non-destructive workflow. That's what I always strive for. So now that you have something, the biggest thing that we would recommend obviously is like heavily post-processing this. So what I think of when I think of that is like the fastest, most non-destructive way to get to where I want to go first. So most people, you've probably seen the renders are like, oh, they're breaking the box down at the bottom or something. To me, I'm like, okay, well, you could do two things. You could delete it. You could delete the floor, or you could just cover it with like a white box. And to me, that makes more sense to cover it with something and to do that, like breaking the box, than having something destructive like deleting things. So I would make like a new layer, maybe call this like white cutouts. Again, things that I will know what they are. Oh, look at this. I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that at all because I just had the outlines here. Do W for magic wand tool, select this stupid thing. M, so there is a watermark. You're just gonna have to crop off the watermark. M is marquee tool. I use this frequently to be able to capture things quickly that I know that I need to get rid of that won't affect other things. So if you want to see that again, I just did hold shift, and then click and drag. So that was really quick instead of me having to go around and lasso, whatever.
You guys talk about destructive versus non-destructive?
No.
Who here knows what that means, non-destructive? Okay, this is super important. This is the same thing as like, when you're like, oh, I don't want to go into InDesign because it feels so funky compared to Illustrator. I'll just make it work in Illustrator, and then before you know it, the file's too big, it's loaded, it's crashing, you can't do what you need because you should have been using InDesign, right? The tool is there for a reason. So with that, from this day forward, no more destructive editing right after you learn what it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, non-destructive editing, and this goes for any software, is being able to go back on what you've done previously. So that means no deleting, that means no moving things weird. So in the sense of, I'll give you an example in Rhino. A lot of people do move edge. So moving the edge causes you to have the ability to like create an unplanar surface. And that to me is very destructive, right? Because if I accidentally think that it's orthogonal and it's not, and now it's like this, like I can't go back from this if I moved on and didn't realize what was going on. So for me, non-destructive is having something that you're like, okay, well, maybe it's actually making a line that you're like, okay, I'm going to make this line that's 10 feet long. And now I'm doing move face, where I know that this is going to be planar because I've already made the proper securities that things are not going to change. Or in Photoshop, non-destructive is like this, where I'm making a new layer to cover up something that I don't want to be there instead of just going in here and deleting it. And now you can go back.
Sounds like, yeah, it does, so what? But the way you want to use Photoshop, the way these tools are set up, is by using masks, by using regions, by using filters, so that you can always go back and tweak, and that you've got that information still contained there. So instead of just like changing the levels or changing the color or eyedroppering and like bucket painting all over until it's this like blurry mess, you use something that changes the color that can always go back to the way it was.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to mask a texture. So if I'm saying like, this is now going to be a concrete texture. So we're going to copy this. I copy things. You can save them. I don't, probably because I'm lazy. But let's say that we're wanting this concrete texture on this floor. First, I'm going to make it perspective-wise, so it looks not just flat like this. So I'm going to do Control-T, which brings up this transform. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to do distort. So that's going to allow me to like distort the image to make it more planar. Let's say that I want to make just this back part more shaded, because right, if we're thinking about how light works, this whole area is in shade, is in the shadow. So I could do the destructive way, which is drawing on this. So I could be like, oh, okay, I would just want to draw this and make it darker. Okay, I need to make it black, so B is brush. This is black here, and I'm gonna draw that. Oh, well, that didn't work at all. Okay, well, I know that I need to keep it inside of this texture, right? So I'm like, okay, well then Sarah showed me pen tool. I'll just do it in pen tool. And then clicking, going all slow, because again, this takes forever. And I'm gonna do brush. Great. Okay, but now I can't make this lighter, because is any shadow this dark also? Like, no. Because look, if I erase, right, because I want to erase it and make it like lighter, right? Well, shoot, now it's just erased my texture. So that's destructive. That's like super, super destructive. So masking. We're going to create a new layer. So this layer should be called something. We should call this concrete. And then we're going to make a new layer down here and call it shadows on concrete, maybe. So now once you have the layer, what you're going to do is attach it or link it to the bottom layer. So what you're going to do is hover over the middle between the two layers. Do you see how the two layers are here? And you're going to hit Alt. And you're going to hold Alt, and this guy comes up. Do you see this like little box with a little arm arrow coming down comes up? And you're going to attach that down. Because now what's going to happen, if we go back to brush, so do you remember it was black, right? We have a black brush. Oh, nothing's happening. Okay. Well, why is nothing happening? Oh, it's because this area is not masked. Only this area is masked. So now you're like, okay, now I have the ability to make this darker. But again, right, we have established that shadows aren't pure blackness. We're looking at a shadow, right? So now we're like, okay, we can actually alter and manipulate this using the opacity and the fill to get it to whatever we need it to be.
Or you can just turn it off.
Or you can just turn it off. Maybe I'm like, I don't like this being this color. So I'm going to select the thing that I had. So I went back up to our outputs here. I'm going to hit W, which is the magic wand tool. And I'm going to click the bench. I'm going to hide this so I don't see it anymore because then I can't see anything. I'm going to make a new layer. So I would click somewhere around here. Let's rename this layer to new colored benches.
Like layer names, there's a difference between you saying and not.
Yeah.
Like digital hygiene is anything. As soon as you start working with other people, which is the nature of the sport of architecture.
And so then once we have it selected, now we're able to, if I want it to be just a solid color, let's say I just want it to be just a solid color, you do have this option now to make it be like a solid color. So you go to the little paint bucket thing, you do fill color, and let's make it like red. So we now have established something as a new layer, but now I'm like, okay, well, no bench is just red. Like I want to add maybe a texture over this. But I don't know, I don't want to just like keep it like this, right? So maybe it's also concrete. So when you copy and paste something in, it's going to automatically come in as a new layer. And what all you're going to do is go between the two, click Alt. See, now you have the little guy. You have to be between the two. It has to be above and it has to be between the two. Because it's as if you're laying trace paper over something. Yeah. Yeah. So you're laying this over the top. And now it's there. And it's a full color over there. So now if you're like, oh, I only wanted like the texture, and now maybe I could bring down the opacity or use a blending tool. So all of these blending tools work really well to do that.
Could you explain what holding the Alt is doing specifically?
Yeah. The Alt itself is telling the computer that you're wanting to attach something, because if my hand's not touching anything right now, so if I hover over it, it just thinks I want to select. So it's almost like when you hit FN on your keyboard to like change the volume or something. That's like what it's doing. It's giving it the alternate like command. Masking though. So if we wanted to mask this, and I was like, actually, I don't like this. Like, do you see? It's like, oh, that's like gross, right? Like, I don't like to see the bottom of the picture that harsh. So we're going to make a mask of the linked layer over the color. So if this is the linked layer, right, we're going to click it and activate it. So now we're on it. And this is again why I don't like the auto select, because when you're clicking around, it just gets mildly chaotic. You're going to go down to the Japanese flag because that's kind of what it looks like. It looks like a Japanese flag or like one singular slice of Swiss cheese. So you're going to hit that. And what's happening is none of the mask has been masked yet. So the white in this situation means that there is nothing being masked. So when we mask, we're going to do brush. So B for brush. And we have to do the opposite of whatever the color is. So if it's white, we want to reveal it with black. If it's black, we want to reveal it with white. I'll show you. So this is white right now, right? This is really small. The background and foreground color, you can change that quickly by using the thing X, the keyboard shortcut X, or you can use this. Do you see how it's changing between the two? Or you can do X you can't see my hand, but it's X is like changes it. So we want to change it to black, right? Because we want to show it. And you're coming in, you're going to make this a little bit smaller because that seems like a really big brush for this. And then you're going to kind of gently brush that in. And now it's not so harsh. I'll show you the opposite of the mask though, when it's not white. So if you have another texture, let's say it's concrete, if you are selecting something, so let's do M for marquee tool. Again, it's just really quick. Select something. In this situation, I'm going to hit the mask, but it's going to take it out of this because I'm indicating that this is the thing I want to mask. So just watch what happens. So I'm going to hit, it's selected, right? We're going to hit the mask and it masks everything else out, and this is the thing that stayed. Did I say the opposite? I don't know if I said the opposite, but that's how that works. So it's only, you're selecting the thing that you're wanting to keep. And so now, do you see the mask is all black and only that piece is white? You can do a lot with masking. It's the best possible thing. Yeah. So that one, it's tricky because now we have this, but I would mask it. I would use a linked layer under the texture itself, because if you use it on top of the texture, since we made a blending mode, it won't show up. So I'll show you what that means. I would click the base one and then make a layer instead of clicking the layered and then making another layer, because then it's just like an extra step. We want it underneath the layer one, because I'll show you both ways. But so we're going to call this shadows. And it should, so brush, B for brush, make sure that's black. So again, this is really harsh. Like you're going to have to like not have it be so harsh of a line here. But see, I'm not even on do you see I'm not even like literally on this, because then that is what will happen. Yeah, I'm like gently brushing around it, because the feather of the brush itself is actually dictating how much shadow I'm putting on it. Because then if I did it on the top, so let's delete that. If I did it on the top accidentally, so I made a new layer, click Alt, link it, shadows. Since the blending mode is under hard light, it'll do this. See, it like doesn't do the same thing because the hard light is overriding how it's looking. Depth map is probably one of the closest things you'll get to it, but since shadows are so fuzzy, literally fuzzy, but also so like non-tangible, the program can't like make a line, right? Because like it's just hard for the computer to be like, well, where do I start and stop the mask? You know what I mean? So not really. You just need to use your intuition. And I think that that's the biggest part with rendering softwares, and that you're having a lot of issues with on Rhino render, is that the light doesn't come in right. And so honestly, oftentimes I'll put textures over everything and almost completely disregard the base image, but I will keep and like understand where the light's actually hitting. And then I'll be like, okay, well, I can add those back in using linked layers, shadows and highlights. So I'll go and do a brush of the shadows, bring the shadows back in, and then go back onto, that was highlights. So that was destructive. That was not good. Shadows, and then this would be highlights. I have done that many times. And then do brush, do X to get to the white, and just brush on. Like remaking your own shadows oftentimes is better. This looks crazy, by the way, but it's because I did it in like 3 seconds. You can do it in a way that looks good.
For anybody who to learn the technicality of cast shadows, it's actually just like drawing in perspective, whether it's a 2.0 or 3.0 perspective. There's a delightful chapter, I think it's chapter 7, design drawing by Chain. You really love shadows. Sometimes it's good to see it. You don't have to like perfect it, but it like helps you wrap your brain around like how shadows are being cast.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind if we throw like an entourage person, like a silhouette person, and just cast the shadow? The one thing that I see a lot of times is things that look like they're floating.
Yeah.
Ended up with that, like, why is everything floating? I gave you a shadow. You have to remember that I'm on the ground. My shadow, it's a Peter Pan. Like my shadow is attached to me wherever, however far it casts. That's the different with what you need light sources. But if I move the shadow away from my feet, then it's like I'm hovering in air. So if you want something that's hanging to have a shadow and to know that it's not touching the ground, the shadow is not touching the object. Otherwise, objects and shadows are always attached to one another.
So let's use this man. I use non-Scandinavia a lot. It's just a really good, it looks cool. There's a lot of
use this website.
People in it. Cool. Great. It's great. So I'm going to copy that mildly homeless looking man, and we're going to put him in here. Oh no, he's a part of this. That will happen sometimes. Did you notice that if I am selecting a linked layer, if you copy and paste something in, you will oftentimes accidentally copy it into the linked layer and then not realize it, and then it'll just be gone forever, and now your man is living inside of the bench. So when you're copy and pasting, make sure that you're like selected on a layer that's not actually linked. Then we're gonna go paste it. And use the trick that Kara taught you guys last semester of like understanding the heights of the people in the entourage. So you're not making your person like super teeny tiny or like super, super tall. Like use her technique to make it not that. She modeled in Rhino a little cylinder, and she rendered one that literally just had that cylinder with the thing, and then she took out the cylinder and rendered through the rest. And so she had multiple cylinders, and so you could like base different heights of people based on those cylinders.
Yeah.
It's very smart.
What's the rule? If I want to throw a bunch of people in there, they burn in my 3D file, and I'm grabbing this person and some other lady and some other person. No matter where this person or the other people are, back there, over here, what's the one thing they all have in common? Eyes are all going to align. Because if you look out there, your eyeballs are always seeing on the horizon. And the person next to you, if they're 20 feet back, their eyeballs are in the same spot. Yeah, I'm a little shorter than maybe the next person, if it's a kid, but don't worry about it. The point is that, like, most eyeballs are somewhere at, like, 5 foot, call it 5'5".
Mm-hmm.
And so a person back there, you don't have to do all the work to scale them. If they're way back there, their eyeballs are still right here. So their feet change based on their depth, but your eyeballs are always on here. So put 2 people in your Photoshop file right now. And prove that you understand
Same man.
horizon and perspective. And then we'll do Photoshop.
Let's say you have this man, and he needs to have a shadow, but actually I'm going to move him over here because the shadow is going to trace over here. So we know based on now the base render, right, that our sun is coming from this way, and is going that way, just based on all of these cues. So I'm going to copy this man. So I'm going to make sure that I'm selecting him. I'm going to click Alt and drag him. So I'm now made second man. And then once I have second man, I'm going to rename him to Man's Shadow because I want to know who this person is. So he's obviously in color and your shadow is not in color. So we're going to go up to Image, Adjustments, Levels. The levels are the thing that will like allow you to change brightnesses and stuff. But in this situation, we're just going to make him black, like completely silhouetted. So we're bringing the far left to the far right because it's black is on the far left, white is on the far right. So we're completely eating the whiteness. Okay, so he's here. You can distort him from this position, but it's just going to be a lot harder because then you're going to have to move around a lot of other points. We're going to do Control-T, rotate him, move him down to his feet. And then, well, hold on, get the angle right. We also need to put him under himself. His shadow is not above him. This is close-ish. Then right-click, distort, just like we did before. And we're going to grab the little nodes, the 4 corner nodes, and drag him so that he's touching himself. Okay. Shadows in this situation, it also appears that they're kind of elongating, so I'm distorting him in a way that also makes him slightly elongated. We're going to get a little close in. And then hit enter. In this situation, you can mask out his little feet and make sure that he doesn't have his feet going past his feet. So that's fine. But then we're going to make it the opacity less, make the fill less. I do both. Some people do just opacity. You should do opacity and fill. Like, it's like weights. If you weight one thing farther than the other, like, it's not equal. So they themselves don't need to be literal equal numbers, but you should be changing the opacity and the fill about the same amount. Opacity is the amount overall, whereas the fill is like the inner bits, like the dark. I don't have a good analogy for this. It's like a level of fading. So opacity is more like ghost, and fill, like it's a ghost, like a ghost person has like less opacity, whereas the fill is like literally taking out almost like the color and the richness of the inner bits of the person. The opacity of watercolor is less than colored pencil, but if you took down the fill of colored pencil, you're just taking out the grains of the colored pencil particles versus not just making a lighter wash. But you should definitely be doing both in conjunction with each other. And then the last thing that I would recommend doing is going to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. So Gaussian blur does just a general blur. It's like kind of a general blur versus like a motion blur, which is like a side to side blur. It's more like a puffy blur. Oh, okay. This is actually good to know too. Do you see? I was like, why is this not like working? Like, right? Like right now it should be blurring. Like it's, the preview's on, it should be blurring, but it's not because it's selected. It's selecting the mask. So what I'm doing is not actually changing the image, I'm changing the mask, and that is not what I want. So we're going to cancel that. We're going to grab the actual layer, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And now do you see it's like changing it? Sometimes if I'm feeling snazzy, because I know that some of you guys feel snazzy sometimes, I'll smudge him or her or they. Shadows are weird, right? Like Peter Pan shadow is like kind of freaky because like it's always sharp, but our shadows are always slightly weird and distorted. And so oftentimes if I feel like a shadow is looking too normal, I'll like smudge it a little bit. Like if it's like a really long, it's like a really long shadow that I'm wanting, but your head is usually the first thing to start elongating on a shadow. I don't know if that's something that you've seen, but I notice that sometimes. Sometimes I'll go through and like elongate with the smudge tool. Do you see what the smudge tool is doing? I'll elongate parts and pieces of it to make it look more like what I feel like an actual shadow would look like. Again, this is like very minuscule detail stuff, but like these small changes make your anything look more like believable. And it's again not to make things more real necessarily, but to make it more less scary to look at, because there's some renders that I bet you guys have seen that are weird and scary looking because it's like uncanny valley. We're trying to like alleviate that with these. One last thing on people. We're going to be talking about this a little bit more later on in the semester, but I haven't branched on anything AI yet. The generative fill and the Photoshop's like that built-in stuff is very helpful sometimes. And in this situation, this man, which is called white cutout, so man, you can click harmonize. It uses AI to understand what is in the scene and what you're trying to get, and it'll try to meld it back into the scene. And then it'll give you options to how you're doing that, and it makes this masked layer. So see, it like, this is what the man was before, this is what the man is after. It's a little weird. Some of them are a little weird just because it's a little confused, but it is kind of understanding, okay, this man needs to be like a little darker on one side, it needs to be a little lighter on the other. It sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't, but that's just something to keep in mind. There's two more things that I want to show you. One thing is the patch tool. Does anyone know what the patch tool is? The patch tool is this thing over here. Key is J. It is what allows me to move through things really quickly. Like if I want to select this man really fast, I might just select him really fast, and it's like kind of like a lasso. But what it's actually meant to do is, see this thing? Instead of like going through, that was S, I just hit S to do clone stamp. Like that was easy, but like sometimes it's like harder to do when you have something that's like not in a vast nothingness. You can do J, which is patch tool. You select the item and then you pull it to whatever you want it to be masked of. And then again, this is can be slightly destructive if you don't do it right, but did you see how it just like made it disappear? So in this concrete, for example, if I was like, oh, I don't like this one spot, I'll like highlight it, drag it to where I want to duplicate something, and then it's gone. It's very fast. It's very, very fast. I use it in photography like 99% of the time. It's really, really, really helpful. So patch tool, really, really helpful. The last thing in my workflow of this whole saga I'm going to export it. And I feel like most people like export it and just have, they're just like, okay, that's done. We're done. It's over. But I don't like to do that because there's a level of like color grading that you don't get in the program of Photoshop when you're starting to layer over all of these different things that you will get if you do it once more. I will show you. So we're going to grab the render. That was, I think, this one. So again, it looks fine. Like, it looks pretty good. We're going to go to filter and camera raw filter. I have videos on this on my YouTube if you want to look at it again. I'm not going to go too in depth with it, but it's pretty much Photoshop's version of Lightroom. And so you're able to go through and like change the overall picture as a whole. And if anyone does anything like movie, film related, you know that color grading is really important. It's trying to make things homogeneous. Like, color grading is used to make things homogeneous within the video, photo, whatever. So in this situation, I'm just trying to make it a little more homogeneous so that when someone is looking at it, they think that it really all just came from one photo and not like bits and pieces all layered on top of each other. So this last step is very important because it's the cherry on top. Like, it truly is like the cherry on top that a lot of people miss just because they're like, oh, okay, well, that's great, done, rendered, throws computer. Like, this last piece will like really make a difference. Like, I promise.